My very first. Let's call
First on the agenda for this evening's meeting is approval of the January 14th School Building Committee meeting minutes. I ask if everyone has not yet had an opportunity to review those, if they please take a quick look at them.
motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any discussion? Those opposed? Hearing none, the minutes have been approved. Next on the agenda is an update from the most recent, good evening, MSBA meeting. Mary sent out a very good synopsis of the meeting and the feedback that we received from the MSBA, which is somewhat remarkable in light of the fact that Mary actually had someone subbing for her at the meeting. So I'm impressed by how well the meeting was carried through the email that we received. Just to give you guys a very quick high-level overview before we turn it over to Scott and the professional team. They were very optimistic about what we put forward. What they asked is that we continue to refine the plan that we put in front of them prior to receiving approval at the end of phase 2. What they asked us to do and continue to move forward is really schematic design in nature. So they really asked us to move forward and start to do steps that would really be happening in the schematic design or phase 3. But the reason for doing so is they wanted to see it a little bit further refined so that as we're moving forward, there's a very clear consensus and a very good understanding of what it is that we're moving forward to going into that schematic design phase. Additionally, there was some discussion about the model school program. As you're all aware, we had put in a request asking that we be invited to apply for the model school program. Previously, you could request to be a candidate. Under the new guidelines, they need to invite you to be a potential candidate, and we did put in a request to do so. They thanked us for our request, and what they said to us was that as much as they respect that we wanted to be part of the program and we're looking for the additional reimbursement points for the town, because they don't have a middle high school model, and because in order for you to be invited to apply to be part of the model school program, there needs to be a minimum of 2 models, of which they don't even have one middle high school model presently, that there would not be an opportunity for us to be invited to apply for the model school building. The fact that not only do they not have a middle high school, but they don't have a middle high school that includes a pre-K component, just further kind of solidifies why they didn't feel that a model school would be the right fit for the town. They also said, based on the design that they've seen thus far and the direction we're going in, obviously understanding the need for separation of students and a number of different programming requirements that we have, they didn't feel that a model school would be even remotely viable because it wouldn't meet the needs of the town. So considering both of those components, the fact that they don't have the minimum 2 models required, and the fact that it wouldn't effectively meet the town's needs, they said that they would not be inviting us to apply for the model school. So the good news with that is we can continue to work on the design that we've been working on, whereas had we been encouraged to apply for the model school, that would kind of hold us up a little bit, because if you get invited into the model school, you're working with that model. So a lot of the work that's gone in thus far, and a lot of things that have come through the input of this community, from the committee, we would have to forego some of those. So as much as we would have loved the additional reimbursement points, it just didn't appear that it would be a good fit for the town and meet the needs of the community. So I am going to turn it over to Scott, ask Scott to give us an update, go through a little bit more refined outline from what we've seen at the last meeting. I encourage everyone to ask questions. Once Scott finishes that, we are going to ask the committee to take an additional vote. This vote will be the same as the vote that we had taken at the subsequent meeting. However, it'll help us present to the MSBA a further refined product, which is what they wanted us to come back with to kind of help indicate the direction that we're going in. So, Scott?
Thank you, Rich. Just as Chairman Tessa pointed out, tonight we're going to go through a very much refined floor plan and site plan for the preferred schematic, the option that the building committee, board of selectmen, and school committee supported. And we have had the opportunity now to spend, we always indicated to this committee as well as the school committee and the board of selectmen that we would continue to refine a proposed option that focused on more separation between the middle school and the high school. The MSBA was very much in support of that option and wanted to see it, just as Chairman Tessa mentioned, very clearly defined, because they feel like it's a relatively specialized program that the town of Abington is proposing, and it certainly solves all of the educational issues pre-K all the way to 12, and the MSBA liked that idea very much, but they pointed out that they want to make certain that the community and this board, as well as the board of selectmen and school committee, know exactly what that building looks like and is in support of it. So tonight we're going to go through the continued evolution of both the site plan and the floor plan, answer any questions, respond to any feedback, keeping in mind that we still have several months of moving through the schematic design process, where we'll continue to refine both the site plan layout and the building layout much further as we move through the next few months. This is the existing site plan. The only thing I wanted to point out with the existing site plan is, as a result of some of the discussions in the working group meetings, we talked a little bit about the property across the street and the ownership of that property, and specifically the property located right here as a possibility for maybe doing some additional parking or moving the tennis courts over, whatever the program piece might be. The question was, could this property in any way assist the overall school project? And so we did do some evaluation of this property over the past couple of weeks. The boundary you see here was a mapping boundary for the wetlands, but it wasn't very specific, and it appears to indicate that there is some area in this particular portion of that property that might not be wetlands. However, we just want to report that we've done some additional investigation with our wetlands expert on our engineering consulting team, and in fact this line should come up into here, and so the majority of the property on this side of the of Glennett's Way is in fact wetlands. So there really aren't any opportunities, even in a small area on this side, to develop. And we took a look at that based on some discussions during the working group meeting.
If you're more comfortable, you can put that mic back down. You don't need to.
Don't need it. Oh, beautiful.
You can if you want. You look good with it, but
I'm much more comfortable putting it down. I
there you
appreciate
go.
that. The site plan, since the last time this building committee saw it, has been adjusted slightly. It will continue to evolve over the next several months, but some adjustments that you would recognize in the site plan would be the fact that we have shifted the proposed building, obviously shown in red here, over to the west or the left-hand side of the property line in an effort to achieve a handful of things. We've also configured the high school part of the building, and just as a reminder, this is essentially the high school academic portion of the building. This is the middle school portion of the building, and then the common shared facilities up the center. And we'll take a look at that in more detail as we look at the floor plan. But we've shifted the building over, and then we've changed the shape of the high school piece itself for a handful of reasons. One was we were shifting the building over to try to pick up more parking on the right side or the east side of the building because we had more play fields on that side of the site. We also shifted the building to the left or west side because we were trying to make sure that we could get 2 full-size fields in the back corner of the site. And so it appears, at least preliminarily, that we can achieve the 2 full-size fields. It appears that we can achieve the additional parking by shifting the building to the left because this parking lot is now larger. This parking area is about the same that it was previously. And the shift and the change in configuration of the high school side of the building also gives us a chance to develop a small pre-K outdoor play area adjacent to the building but just outside of the pre-K classrooms. And the reason for the shift in the configuration of the building shape, and again we'll see this in more detail on the floor plan, is because this allows us to assemble the pre-K right here in this area and then have the high school occupy this area. We'll look at that in a little bit more detail. By shifting this forward, you may recall the floor plan that you saw previously just had more of an L here, so the building came back a little further. That was interfering with the fields, but it was also making this notch that leads into the high school cafeteria and dining area a little bit deeper than we wanted. So by pulling this forward, it opens up this area a little bit more to the outdoors, doesn't trap it kind of deep in a corner there. It makes it a lot more successful. We've also reconfigured the tennis courts. I think you might recall on the last site plan that they were configured in a row in the other direction, and so we wanted to configure them in a north-south direction instead of an east-west direction. So this is the appropriate north-south direction for the tennis court alignment. We'll continue to study the traffic patterns, both leading into the site and circulating through the site. Right now, this site plan, just as a preliminary site plan, shows a couple of curb cuts into the high school side and a curb cut into the middle school side. And it suggests that the bus parking and drop-off will occur at the front of the building, and there'll be the opportunity for two-way traffic coming into all of the different parking lots. But we show some one-way arrows on the roadway that's right up against the building that comes around. Those aren't necessarily because that would be one way. All of the drives right now are sized for two-way traffic, and we kind of want to solicit more school input, more town-wide input, have the traffic analysis completed, and have a complete vetting of the site plan before we decide definitively what the best circulation pattern is on the site. But with this amount of auto and bus circulation on the site, we know from past experience that it can easily handle the amount of traffic that will be coming in and out and still segregate it, middle school versus high school, bus versus auto, and get safe pedestrian access into the site. So the detail of exactly how those things will take place is part of the reason we'll continue, the site plan will continue to evolve through schematic design. But at least this demonstrates that that the proposed plan works on the site. The dotted line that you see right here, as you may recall, is the existing building. So this site plan also suggests to us that we're able to construct a new building without interfering with the continued use of the existing building, which will clearly be one of our goals. You may recall early on in this process, we had options that sometimes had to demolish a portion of the existing building. It appears that with this configuration, we wouldn't have to do that until the new building is complete, and then obviously we would demolish the existing building. Currently underway is a detailed boundary survey and topography survey on the entire site, and that will be when we have enough detailed information to really start to get down to, you know, a foot or two here and a foot or two there. This right now on this site, we're probably in the plus or minus 3 to 5 feet range in terms of knowing exactly what some of the parameters are around the perimeter, and the detailed survey, boundary and topological survey will give us all the data that we need to make some really finite decisions with regard to the site layout. Any questions related to site before we can certainly come back to that. We have continued to refine the building layout. You probably start to see more little walls and doors and spaces subdivide themselves up, whereas previously we had talked about it in like a block of administration space, and you can see all the little individual spaces that go into the middle school administration, guidance, and nursing area are starting to define themselves. And we'll continue to do that over the next several months through schematic design. But this is the kind of definitive layout that the MSBA wanted us to develop and have this committee and the town in general take a look at, because it does start to separate clearly middle school and high school and show where the detailed spaces are located. This would be very similar to the plan that you saw in January, except that we have more clearly refined and defined the food service area, the central kitchen that services both the middle school dining or cafeteria area, as well as the high school dining and cafeteria area, as well as the middle school dining and cafeteria area. One of the things that the MSBA wanted to know was, are those two distinctly unique and different and separated dining areas, and can they both be serviced from the kitchen without the students having to mix or commingle? So what this is demonstrating is that the kitchen will ultimately be designed so that the middle school students are receiving from this side, and the high school students are receiving from this side, and the middle school students are receiving from this side. It also starts to show clearly how receiving to the building in terms of food receiving, supplies receiving, utility services in terms of maintenance, etc., would happen, in that we have a service corridor coming to the back area to, for example, the receiving and loading area, the kitchen, the food service area, the custodial and storage area. This area will include that loading and receiving area with a corridor, a service corridor coming in, and we'll create some parking area. And so on the site, we've started to open this area up so that there's a little bit of parking there and the ability to receive all those goods. We still have the gymnasium and the auditorium located as they've always been located, but you can see in areas where we previously just showed blocks of space, we're starting to more clearly define the middle school gymnasium, the separation of the locker areas, middle school side or high school side versus middle school side, girls versus boys. And those areas will continue to get even more refined, in fact, much more refined. But at this stage, one can look at the plan and start to see how those things are going to lay out. We did have some discussion in the working group, I should just point out, about the location of the auditorium and the location of the gymnasium, And certainly you could suggest that there are some arguments for possibly placing the gymnasium here and the auditorium here. And so we spent some time discussing the possible flip-flop of those. And there were a lot of reasons academically why we wanted to integrate the auditorium as close to the academic cores as possible. Abington has not had the benefit previously of an auditorium within their academic service, but with the integration of that and the introduction of the space, the staff and administration feel like it's a valuable resource academically. We also talked about the fact that the gymnasium and its lots of weekend use, after-hour use, and its connection to the fields, and the fact that you could kind of separate it off for that weekend and after-hours use very easily if it was on the end, that ultimately we did end up leaving it in this location, but some really good discussion around what the right placement is. And those are the kinds of things that we wouldn't necessarily stop discussing as we move through schematic design. If there are significant reasons to adjust some things, we'll be continuing to discuss them. As I mentioned, the pre-K, with the reorganization of this high school piece, the pre-K finds a nice home in this area within the plan, with the high school located in this area on the first floor. And we started to look at the integration of science and math, for example, on the first floor, and some of the key shared spaces like teacher planning that will be located between those two areas. In the middle school side, we've started to define more clearly as well some of the individual spaces, but we still have the concept of the 3 teams on this floor serving grades 5 and 6, and then on the upper floor, the 3 teams serving grades 7 and 8. So you'll still see that same configuration. Keeping in mind, by the way, that these are the shared facilities down the middle school and high school. This is a middle school corridor where the middle school can come back and go to their gym or to their locker room areas. It can also get into the auditorium from this side. And then this is the high school corridor, keeping the high school students on this side of the building in close proximity to their academic areas. They come and enter into any of those shared facilities. Second floor, as a reminder, we still got that basic separation. Middle school on this side, high school on the other side. This floor happens to set up very nicely with the humanities located on this floor, although a lot of these classrooms are interchangeable in terms of their design to keep it pretty flexible. We have the 3D art and 2D art on this level for the high school. We've got the Library and Media Center centrally located, again, so that it can be a shared resource in the middle for both the middle school and the high school. And then we're starting to develop, again, on the second floor, the more detailed program areas, the middle school art, middle school CTD, some of the shared core areas for each of these 3 teams that occur on each floor include some project-based learning lab, some presentation and exhibit area for the teams to be able to come out of their academic area and utilize collaboratively among the teams, and even among the individual teams themselves. Upper level auditorium will be accessible from the second floor, just because the seating in the auditorium will come up high enough that the back area will match up with the second floor level, and we're starting to show some doors and an entry point in that location. One of the things that has come up in the last few weeks is just a little bit of discussion about ultimately with this project moving forward, what would be some of the design elements that would be included in the school in terms of a green or an energy efficient design. And so we've had some discussion, and we won't get into a lot of detail tonight, but we've had some discussion about the general concept of There'll certainly be green elements associated with the development of the site itself. When somebody says green design, or often LEED, the acronym LEED is referred to, which means leadership in environmental and energy design. Environmental being the site and the building's impact on the greater environment, and energy being the building's energy use and lowering that energy use. So with the site, there'll be a lot of different characteristics of the site that will be targeted at lowering the building's impact on the environment. Things like electric vehicle charging stations in the parking lot, the way we deal with and treat rainwater, we'll have to study the location of the site and proximity to residential neighborhoods and other resources, and all of that plays into, and in Abington, the high school site happens to be environmentally a really good location to propose a site for a lot of different reasons, but those are all the things that we'll be studying as we demonstrate the good decisions surrounding the site planning and the site design. And then there'll be buildings more specific to there'll be items more specific to the building, like a rainwater collection system that collects the rainwater from the roof and utilizes it in the building toilets to greatly reduce the overall water consumption of the building. There'll be high efficiency mechanical and electrical systems and lighting systems. For example, we were explaining last week to the working group that even in something as simple as a classroom, the lighting systems will be set up to automatically monitor how much natural light is coming in through the windows and adjust the amount of artificial light in the classroom accordingly, so that the light in the classroom is always balanced, but never using too much energy, particularly on a bright day when you'll see almost all of the lighting, in artificial lighting in the classroom go down. There'll also be mechanical systems that automatically monitor the number of students or faculty members in any given space and adjust the fresh air and the temperature based on the occupants in lieu of a system that just runs at the same constant level all the time and would waste energy. So things like the window systems, the mechanical, electrical, pumps, fans, etc., all have to pass a pretty rigorous analysis, not only by us, but also by the MSBA's review team, to ensure that we're designing a green building. Ultimately, this committee has made a commitment to design to the level that is referred to as LEED Silver, which guarantees the additional 2% reimbursement points, or in the case of a project of approximately this size, a couple of $1 million in additional assistance from the MSBA to design to that LEED Silver level. And all the things that you see here are part of designing to that particular level. Even things like the use of low VOC materials and regional materials. In order to have a green project, even the new materials that go into the building can't come from outside a certain mile radius, because you're trying to reduce the amount of travel and all the trips for bringing the products to the site. So there are literally hundreds of things that you wouldn't even think about that have to go into this kind of project to get it to qualify for the LEED Silver designation. Many of the materials will include recycled and reused content. Again, all in that effort to comply with those. There'll be a LEED score, what is called a LEED scorecard, which is this document, where it's kind of a summary of all of the categories on the project that involve environmental or energy conscious design, and a scoring mechanism for all those different categories. And as we move forward with the project, we'll continue to evaluate how many overall points the project is scoring and make certain that we fall within the criteria for that LEED Silver designation. And we'll be talking about that a lot more, but sometimes somebody will refer to the level of LEED design or your LEED scorecard and we just wanted the committee to know this is a LEED scorecard, and LEED Silver is the design level we're targeting. One of the questions that had come from the Abington community group, and I'll apologize, I can't recall. Sage. Sorry, I like that name actually. I don't know why I can't remember. That group had asked us about some of the criteria that they would like to see the building comply with, because it was criteria that Abington is establishing as a community, and we have responded preliminarily by saying that with the building targeted towards LEED Silver, will certainly comply with all of their desired or established criteria and go well beyond that with this particular project.
Scott, can I just ask you, so we're targeting LEED Silver, that makes us eligible for an additional 2%. What does gold get us per percentage?
Gold gets you nothing more than the 2%.
Thank you very much.
Yes, that's a good question. Gold gets you more pride in how green your building is,
That's
but
important.
and it does make the building slightly more efficient. I mean, we'll get to have that discussion at some point in time. The building committee, the town, will have the opportunity to determine if in fact there is value in pursuing a level above and beyond LEED Silver. But we certainly, and LEED Silver is very high, don't get me wrong. There are very few LEED Silver projects in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and so LEED Silver is very high. But at some point in time, as we look at the project in more detail, if there is opportunity to perhaps, at no additional cost even, achieve that LEED Gold level, we would want to at least share those opportunities. So, any other questions related to any of that information? Okay, super.
Scott, on the site plan, is there going to be any, let's call it, redesign to Glenowitz Way coming into the school system?
Yes, possibly. A couple of things. We until we get the final topographical and boundary survey and the traffic analysis and have a little bit of community-wide discussion, we don't know precisely how we want to handle the entry points to the site. And so right now you can see this entry point is shown at the existing traffic circle or rotary, and it may not be exactly that way, and we may propose some modification of that rotary as part of making a good entry and exit drive. And then the curb cut certainly will be a change. We don't think that the traffic analysis will say that major modifications have to be made, for example, in the width or the configuration of the majority of Glenowitz Way as you know it now. So in terms of its width or basic dimensions coming up to the site, we don't suspect that there'll be any recommendations for change there, but there may be some modification at the entry points. The other thing we should mention, because it's been talked about a number of times, is as we continue to develop the site plan, we may look for some kind of emergency exit point on the site. We've talked about the back corner on a couple of occasions, and we've talked about a possible emergency exit through here to the adjacent residential complex as well. If that happens, it would only happen after a lot more discussion about what does or does not make sense on the site, and in any instances, think of that as like a gated, fully enclosed, not normally used, purely emergency egress or entrance point, because that's the only real way we've discussed it. We know that the traffic analysis will show that the boulevard width and the overall organization of the traffic coming on that boulevard will be more than sufficient to kind of handle the site itself. So it won't be as if we're looking for another entry or exit point as a result of the activities on the site. It would only be kind of that emergency possibility that we would be taking a look at.
Can you mention the past discussion we had about different start times in order to also separate the traffic?
Sure. The I mean, one of the things that the traffic analysis will talk about this as well when it's completed, but the assumption is that there will be staggered start times for the high school and the middle school. You don't have to stagger them by much in order to only have to deal with kind of the middle school traffic during a 15 to 20 minute period and deal with the high school traffic during a different period. So there will likely be staggered start times for the two schools in an effort to levelize the traffic during those key peak periods of time coming into and out of the site.
For parents and student drop-off, is that thought to go around the perimeter while the buses are out front?
We'll want to certainly separate parent and auto. We've talked about the middle school auto drop-off area possibly being here because you've got that middle school corridor that comes right up and in, or here because we may be able to develop an entry right into the academic core. So one way or another, the middle school auto drop-off will likely be somewhere on this side of the building, and then the high school drop-off will occur on their side of the building, and then it'll just be a question of whether we develop the pattern so that we let them come back out on this side, which is a likely scenario, or if there's some benefit in possibly letting them circulate around the other side of the building. Clearly the intent with this parking lot is more student focused so that the high school students who are coming to the site and parking can come in on this side and go out on this side without ever having to loop around or drive on the middle school side. And those will be things that we continue to talk about and talk through and sort out. But in general, that's the way we're thinking about some of those concepts now. Any other questions?
Can I just ask you, on the second floor plan, I'm just trying to visualize the behind the library media center is the area that appears to be over the chorus and band areas, which are on the first floor. Is there some sort of second floor space there or not, or what is that?
There would not be a second floor space there. Those will likely be volumes that are 1.5 to 2 stories in height, just because functionally that will make them better spaces. And so they'll be taking up a volume in this area, but there would be no access necessarily to them. When we continue to develop the design, it's possible that the roof of these areas, being a 2-story volume, would be high enough that they would have a full story exposed to, for example, this corridor that's going back to the auditorium, and there might be the desire to create some transparency between that corridor and the space below, possibly. But right now, the only thing we're saying in this plan for certain is that there will be a corridor connection between here and the auditorium for access to the second floor auditorium area. And this corridor that runs back here that gets you connected to the auditorium is overlooking the cafeteria and dining space below, because this is also a 2-story volume below. One of the nice things that we're trying to set up with this floor plan in general is something that we often describe as wayfinding, which means that you walk into a building and it's immediately fairly obvious what the circulation patterns for the building are, because psychologically, the more simple you can make a circulation pattern and the more obvious you can make it, the better. So when you come in the building here, this cafeteria, the middle school cafeteria, is a 2-story volume, and as you're walking along this lower level, you would see up on the upper level you would be able to see, if you can imagine being down in one of these lobby areas or even in the middle school dining space, you would see this walkway coming across on the second floor level, because all of this is open. This walkway coming across on the second floor level with the library media center right behind it. So from this volume or from one of these lobbies, you would be able to see, okay, I see that second floor landing. I can see the library media center. That's a shared space between the high school and the middle school. And if I go that way, clearly on the second floor, I must be headed to the high school. On the second floor, that way is headed to the middle school. And the corridor ahead of me keeps me on the middle school common side, and the corridor ahead of them keeps them on the high school common side. And it's a very simple organization that allows somebody, if you were to be standing there having a conversation with them, to immediately get their bearings in lieu of having to tell somebody, oh, you go down here. If you go into middle school, you go in here and you take a left and you go up and you take a right. It's a very simple organization, and it's done that way intentionally and deliberately. And it's one of the advantages of this newly organized plan versus some of the renovation and expansion options to the existing building, is it's a very efficiently and neatly organized building. It results in shorter corridors, shorter travel lengths, less corridors, less building envelope, all those things play into that, but it's intentionally trying to be fairly simple in its organization. Yeah.
Just a question, how many elevators would be in this building? And where approximately would they be located?
The easiest way to see we've moved them a couple of times. I think in this most recent version, the primary, Troy, help me out. Where's the secondary?
Near the middle school guidance admin area.
Yeah, right here.
It'll likely move around a few times as we get into the organization of those spaces.
Yeah. We started the build. You may have seen floor plans before that had 2 elevators for the building, but as the building has gotten more compact, we only have a requirement for the 1 elevator that you see, and so it's located here fairly close to the core. At some point in time, could we introduce a second elevator? We could, but right now it appears that if we keep 1 close to the central core, that we've got sufficient elevator capacity for the entire building.
Scott, even for the nighttime use of the auditorium, that won't be a problem.
Right, yeah.
Just
Sorry.
Just to follow up on that, I know there's some concern in the community about having the elementary and the high school in the same building, and the separation that we've talked about. It wouldn't seem likely to me you could keep that separation with 1 elevator.
If as we continue to develop the plan, we feel like we need one over on the high school side, certainly you could introduce one. One of the questions we'll have for the staff and administration regarding the use of the high school on a piece like that is, how often do the students utilize that? In a lot of our buildings that we've designed, they actually lock the elevator down and don't allow students to use it during the day, because they'll only have maybe 1 or 2 students out of an entire population that are allowed any access to it. So we could certainly introduce, it would be very simple to introduce an elevator on the high school side if we decide that that's too much movement, into the middle school area, for sure. Easy to accommodate, because you raise a really good point, and because we're videotaping this tonight, and it may end up sort of broadcast publicly, I make a lot of assumptions sometimes because the building committee has seen this plan a number of times, but just as a reminder for the general public who may ultimately be viewing this, we are in fact showing the separate middle school entry the separate high school entry, with the intent that the high school student entry will likely occur, and a lot of the high school circulation will be through this entry on this side. And so it is our goal, and the entire building is designed around that concept of the high school students coming in either here, but primarily here on this side of the building, and only needing to circulate on this side of the building, and the middle school students coming in here, and as I pointed out, the entry here, and possibly even an entry here on this side of the building. There will be spaces that will provide opportunities for both populations, most of which are organized in the core of the building, where certainly we wouldn't want to prohibit the middle school from taking advantage of some of the more advanced high school programs, but for the most part, this building does align itself with that kind of clear separation, middle school versus high school. In fact, I think that we've talked in the past about a variety of different schools in the Commonwealth that are co-located middle high schools, and all of them have varying degrees of separation. East Bridgewater has a co-located middle high school with not nearly this much and distinct a separation, but I think here, as we continue to talk with the staff and administration, talk with this committee, and reach out and hear from the community, the more distinctly separate middle school and high school appeared to be the direction everybody wanted to go in. And in fact, one of the reasons that the MSBA asked us to reach out to the various boards and committees in towns with a more clearly delineated floor plan is because at the end of the preferred schematic, we pointed out that a variety of different options were considered, but there would probably be movement through schematic design to a more clearly delineated separation. And so they said, well, if that's the case, we think that's a really good idea. Let's see more precisely what it looks like, and let's have your boards and committees then say, yes, that's definitely a good direction that we're going in. Sean?
Can you point out for the viewers at home again that you have separate locker rooms, middle and high school, and also if you could talk about how we further separated the middle school grades by using different floors?
Yes, good point. The middle school locker area is on this side, again connected to the middle school corridor that comes up this side. And all of this area right that you see right here in the shaded pink area would be those middle school locker areas and toilet areas and everything they would need. And then on the high school side, again, the high school corridor coming from the high school side would be the high school locker rooms, ultimately subdivided perhaps into both locker rooms and team rooms. So this layout may be a bit more refined, but keeping all of the high school students, boy and girl, on this side, obviously separating them, girls versus boys side. Same over here, separating them boys versus girls side in those areas for that separation. And then within the middle school, we talked about early on one of the goals being that we wanted to separate somewhat the 5-6 population from the 7-8 population. So earlier, when I talked about the 3 teams on this floor, I'm referring to 5th and 6th graders occupying this first floor, divided up into 3 teams. And by the way, that means a 5th grade team, a 6th grade team, and then a 5-6 team, which academically offers a lot of opportunities where students can do some more advanced work as part of the way that teaming is organized. And then on the upper floor, again, the 3 teams, team here, team here, team here, and these would all be 7 and 8 students. So they're on the second floor, and the 5-6 students are down on the first floor. Any other questions? That's good. We are planning on beginning to establish some open community meetings and public forums. I don't mean to step into a territory that will be talked about later tonight anyway. I'm not sure if there's going to be a discussion about that, but just so everybody knows, within the month of February, certainly no later than early March, we plan on going out with some of the preliminary design stuff and getting input from the user groups on the fields and the organization of the site plan and the amenities that need to be associated with the site, and getting continued input on parking. Right now we show, in our opinion, based on typical schools of this size, a significant amount of parking, but we want to make sure that we talk with all the user groups. It may potentially be utilizing any of the recreational fields or parking or tennis courts or any of those things, and get their input. And then certainly we'll be starting to make this building floor plan more publicly available. I know certainly all of these meetings are public, but we want to have a special meeting where we go out to the community and invite people to comment and provide feedback on the design of the building as it continues to move forward, at a stage when we still have the opportunity to make adjustments and incorporate their feedback. So we'll be doing that in a time frame. Okay. Mary, did you have anything that you wanted to add to this, or?
Just briefly, just as a recap, as Richard mentioned, we did meet with the Facilities Assessment Subcommittee with MSBA on the 15th of January. And as a result of that, MSBA has asked us to refine the designs, which is what has been presented to you, to further delineate the spaces within the building in accordance with the space summary sheet, which was also passed out to you. This is the latest revised space summary sheet that we will also need to submit to MSBA. As a requirement, we were also asked to update our project schedule forecasting forward to include the change in the board meeting date from January 29th to March 26th. We have done so, and that will be included in the submission package. And also to confirm the final pricing of options, which was provided in the original study documentation, and has been updated to comply with the refined space summaries and floor plans and site plans that you've seen today. So the last component for us to be able to make this submission is that MSBA is requiring us to gain local approval and authorization to submit the documentation. It is the similar vote to what we took back in on November 21st. Basically agreeing that at this point that the committee is selecting option 1 as the preferred option. And then a second vote, and both of these I need to take a, yes, I do, a roll call vote to authorize the owner's project manager to submit the feasibility study related materials to MSBA. And our plan is to then meet with the joint meeting of Board of Selectmen and School Committee on Thursday night to gain their approval, as we did on December 2nd, I believe, on the previous study documents. We will then submit to the MSBA. MSBA has already contacted us and asked to set up a conference call with the the professional team and representatives of the building committee and school district to talk about the documentation and our ability to meet their deadline of next week on February 13th for the submission. We certainly will. And then the plan moving forward for the March 26th board meeting.
What happens at that March 26th board meeting?
Well, it would be hoped that we have gone through all the different steps with MSBA and the project team that we have from MSBA, and that it will be a basic review of the proposed preferred solution, the impact that our project will have on their pipeline of projects moving forward, our projected schedule, so that is included in their pipeline. And typically it's a pretty much a vote of approval. If you're asked to attend that board meeting, it's typically to give you a vote of approval to move forward to schematic design.
And for the benefit of the group, Mary, the Facilities Assessment Subcommittee that we met with is a subset of the MSB board. So there are representatives from the MSBA board that are part of the Facilities Assessment Subcommittee that we've met with already and have given us very positive feedback in the direction that we're heading in thus far.
So then what kind of a formal vote do you need, Mary, to be able to share with the MSBA? That we make a motion that we,
Yeah, I wanted to lay out the steps first, make sure everyone's comfortable at this point that we've reviewed all the information. You understand that what amendments that we'll be making to the study documents. If there's any questions, just make sure you bring them up now. And if it's acceptable, I'll read the first of the two votes.
Can I just ask a question before we proceed?
Yeah.
It's because I had sent you an email earlier. So the vote we're taking tonight, is this replacing the vote from November? Or is it just a vote to make changes? Or is it, because my preferred option was not this option at the November vote, I would have preferred the addition renovation, one of those options. So, in other words, is this replacing that vote? Is it redoing that vote? Is that vote?
It's replacing that vote based on amended documents. That's why we're doing it. So it's clearly stating that, and the vote will read, to affirm based on the preferred schematic study and report documentation amended February 2014, a preferred alternative for further advancement during schematic design of option 1, a new grade 5 to 12 co-located school with pre-K. So it's just so we're documenting the fact that we took those November documents, we have amended them, that the committee is aware of those amendments, and that you're again approving that is the preferred option.
And essentially submitting this.
Yes.
No further questions.
I'll make the motion.
Andrew, thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We need to do a roll
Need to do a
call.
roll call.
Yep. Hands up, please. Any against? Any abstaining? Okay, thank you. The second motion would be to approve and authorize the owner's project manager to submit the feasibility study related materials as amended February 2014 to the MSBA for its consideration.
so moved.
Second.
All those-
Who was the second? Oh, David?
Yes.
All those in favor?
Thank you.
Any opposed?
No
None?
abstaining.
Any abstaining?
Thank you.
Unanimous. Okay. A couple other additional items on the agenda. A budget update, Mary?
Yes, included in the agenda that was handed out is a budget update. Two new items that have been included in the committed line item as part of AI3's original proposal. I did one of them, I didn't go over them, but as part of AI3's original proposal, they did have line items for geotechnical investigations and a site boundary survey. What should be shown on the committed line item is $30,000 assigned to geotechnical under extra services, and an additional $30,000 for the survey work. They've since the original contract secured vendors to do both of those work. Those are outside contractors who do those. That information is submitted through AI3. They then incorporate all that information into the design documents. So those two additional items will be moving forward, and I know that Scott and Troy have already started to schedule with Jason to get the people on site to do the work. And with regard to bills, we had one bill that was submitted by AI3 for the next phase of the traffic work that was included in the feasibility study. So we increased the traffic expended amount about $6,000.
All right, I see you have the $30,000 committed to geotechnical. What was the other
This
30?
survey, I should have pulled it over and I did not
Oh,
have that
okay,
up
it's
on
just
the
not
next
in there.
survey.
Okay, thank you.
So we are tracking on or below budget, continuing to carry a contingency of $29,507.
Thank you for the update, Mary. General business and items not reasonably anticipated 48 hours in advance. We did have a communications subcommittee meeting yesterday, which we just wanted to give you a very quick update on. We put together a small handout that we intend to use to continue to hopefully drive people to the site, continue to encourage people to attend the meetings. Heading into phase 3, public input is going to be critical for this project. So we're hoping that by handing out these simple pamphlets, that we can continue to encourage community input, get people to get onto the website, to subscribe to the minutes, to subscribe to the updates, and also come to the meetings. So for those of you that aren't on the committee, I thank you for being present, and we're encouraged by the continued input that we receive from the community. As Scott had alluded to, going forward, we'll start to hold a number of community meetings. So those will include, the youth sports organizations, those will include community organizations. We've started to meet with, have preliminary meetings with some of the town meetings, town committees, just to get some feedback. And all of those, meetings will really start to ramp up in the middle to later part of this month, and then carry us through phase 3 in its entirety. The thought would be, once we have the joint school committee and board of selectmen meeting on Thursday, and we move forward through the formal process, that we can then start to take the proposed schematic on the road and start to gain additional community input into the refining of the design and what will ultimately be the final product that'll come out of this. So that's just a quick update. I would encourage everyone to review that document, to give us any feedback, input, thoughts or suggestions related to it. Obviously the goal is to help inform the community about the project, help to answer some frequently asked questions that we've received thus far, and continue to encourage people to attend the meetings and to continue to give us their input and feedback as the process progresses. So.
So is this the final document, or is this just for our review?
This is an initial document, so we're certainly looking for feedback and hoping to refine it.
Okay, because I'm just, going forward as we get more into the public meetings, and I'm sure we're going to create, more sophisticated documents.
Absolutely.
If the subcommittee could bring them to the full committee, because then at that point, everybody on the committee is responsible for what goes out.
Absolutely.
And I remember we had a discussion of, I think it was Marshfield, that a pamphlet was sent to the town, and then the whole committee was fined because it was information that shouldn't have been in it. So
absolutely. Yeah, and the intent, just to reiterate, the intent of any of the information that comes out of this committee is purely to inform the community about the project as a whole. It's not intended to take a project stance, but really to garner feedback from the community and continue to create that dialogue with the community and encourage their input. So, we're always looking for feedback and refining that.
If anyone does, this is the 7th draft probably, of about 10 or 11 people looking at this. So if people do have anything that they want to tweak, and it's dated on the top of the first page with the idea, like she said, that there's probably going to be something new and different coming out later as we get more feedback and kind of what are some of the buzz issues, hot button issues, and as we get more information from MSBA. Something more formal. This is really to get people hopefully highlighted to the website, so that that's where they can kind of get the much better information.
So, Rich, are these available now, or
Or
not?
I'd like to give the committee a little bit of time to send any feedback that they may have, so take some time to review them. I'd encourage everyone over the next week or so, if they have any suggestions, comments, edits, to submit those through to myself, Peter, Mary, and then we can certainly refine that document and get it out in a, get it out into a more formalized format. One other item not on the agenda, one of our committee members, Mr. Whiting, recently had heart surgery, so I'd like to just send a card around to the committee members to sign, wishing him well and hoping him a speedy recovery so he can get back and continue to give us a very valuable insight into this process. So, future meetings. We do have our next working group meeting is, the next meeting will be with the Board of Selectmen and School Committee Thursday at 6 p.m. At the Town Hall.
Yes.
In the Carter Room. We will then have, there's a working group meeting Friday morning at 7:30 at the North School. So we continue to encourage people to attend that as well. Mayor, should we attempt to set a date for the next full committee meeting?
Scott and Trey, is it a month from now? Work good for you? Do you want to try to do it sooner? The week of the 16th school vacation week.
Yeah, I think a month from now is probably appropriate, considering that in the meantime, we will possibly, get some feedback from that conference call with MSBA and just know where the submittal stands. So, yes.
March 4th, is that okay?
Okay. So the next meeting of the full committee will take place March 4th, 6 p.m. Tentatively here.
I'm scheduled to be at the Finance Committee meeting.
Okay.
We're having to allow it to so I'm going to change that or in the house set before that date.
I don't have an objection to going out another day or two.
If it gets complicated, I
That
can ask them
works.
to put me on another evening, but if it's easy to change for people.
Could we go another week to the 11th? So.
Yep.
We have a conflict actually on the 11th. But the 6th is fine.
Yeah, Thursday the 6th. Fine.
Thank you.
Does that work for the Prairie community? Okay. All right, so March 6th, 2014, 6 p.m. in the community room here at the Abington Police Station.
Can I just get back to this flyer for a second? If you could try to, if you have any comments, if you could get back to Rich or Peter, at the end of the week, so that we can solidify this, because we would like to get this out in February as much as we can to the different groups, or if you want to take it to your own group or neighborhood, whatever you want to do. Just want to have something ready, because I think people that are now hearing the buzz and want to know what's going on.
Yeah, the sooner we can get a document into the community's hands to encourage more participation at the meetings, the better. Obviously, we want to get the community engaged in this process as much as possible, and the earlier we can get them involved in this process and get their feedback and insight, the better. So I think the quicker we can turn around that document, the better prepared we will be to get it out to the community and continue to encourage their input and feedback. So, do we have anything else for the good of the group? Hear a motion to adjourn?
So move.
All those in favor? Opposed? All right. Have a good evening.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Stop this
Thank you for coming.